Oh, spread moves. Why single out a single opponent in a double battle when you can target both? Well, that's the point of a spread move. Spread moves are incredibly powerful. So powerful, in fact, that they actually have their damage reduced slightly when hitting both targets. That said, with the amount of buffs there are in the game, that power drop isn't all that noticeable. Whether it's bonus damage from a stat boost, an item, ability, or in Generation 9's case, terrestrialization, spread moves are dangerous to face, especially since some spread moves hit your own side of the field too. That's right, if you're not careful, you can hit your own partner by accident if you aren't paying attention. Or if you're a psychopath. I'm kidding. Sometimes you want to hit yourself. Weakness policy, anyone? Getting back on track, spread moves are incredibly strong and therefore are prominent in competitive play. If you aren't careful, they can give you a nasty time. So, how do you deal with spread moves? Well, in the case of spread moves that can hit your own partners, the telepathy ability protects Pokemon with that ability from spread moves used by their partners. But that's only a temporary band aid. Ultimately, the way to get around spread moves is the move Wide Guard. Wide Guard is a +3 priority protection based move that protects the user and its partner from spread moves, regardless of if they are damage based or status based. Oh, that's right. There are status moves that hit both sides too. You just don't see them that often. Wide Guard was introduced back in Generation 5 alongside a move called Quick Guard to diversify the range of protecting moves, since back then it was mainly just Protect and its lesser PP and more exclusively distributed fighting type clone, Detect. Though the name Detect goes way harder than Protect, just saying. Now, Quick Guard was introduced to counter priority moves, and over the years, Game Freak has implemented new mechanics to further block priority moves in the form of new moves, abilities, and psychic terrain. As of right now, spread moves haven't been slapped with that kind of treatment. It's pretty much a wide guard responsible for holding back spread moves. Will we see a new ability or move introduced in Generation 10 that helps lighten wide guard's burden? Not likely, but hey, anything is possible. So right now, wide guard's viability is extraordinarily good on competitive teams. The current format regulation for VGC is Reg I, a double restricted legendary format where you can play with 2 restricted legendary Pokemon on your team, and there are a lot of restricted legendary Pokemon that love to run spread moves. Just to name a few options, we got Astral Barrage and Glacial Lance from the Calyrex forms, Water Spout and Origin Pulse from Kyogre. In the past, Miraidon would run Discharge and have now adapted to Terra Fairy Dazzling Gleam. And that's just the restricted legendary Pokemon. There's still plenty of other Pokemon that can do major damage with spread moves. Now, who can actually use Wide Guard? Let's get to the main meat and potatoes behind this, and let's start off by talking about some restricted legendary Pokemon. So starting off, we've got Zamazenta, Lunala, and Solgaleo. All 3 of these Pokemon can learn Wide Guard. And the nice thing here too is Regulation I is a double restricted format, meaning you can have 2 restricted legendary Pokemon on your team, and therefore you can afford to spare a move slot to put Wide Guard on one of these Pokemon. In a single restricted format, such as Regulation G, you only have the 1 restricted legendary Pokemon, and you typically want that Pokemon to be a heavy hitting Pokemon, and you want to get them set up as quickly as possible, whether you're going for a move like, say, Sword Stance on Groudon, or maybe you're just going for raw Choice Specs boosted damage on Miraidon. You mainly want that legendary Pokemon to come in, hit the field, and pick up as many KOs as possible before going down itself. Now, this is a double restricted format in Regulation I, which means now we can afford to put the odd support move here and there on our restricted Pokemon, since now we have 2 restricted legendaries doing the work and sharing that burden between them. And on top of that, too, we still have the other 4 Pokemon, so we definitely have plenty of options to build around in this case. When it comes to Wide Guard specifically, Lunala and Zamazenta have had success in the competitive formats by running Wide Guard and protecting their teams. And they've also been able to do some decent damage. In Lunala's case, it gets access to its signature move of Moongeist Beam, it gets Expanding Force, it gets Moonblast, and in Zamazenta's case, once it gets set up with its defense boost, whether it's from its Dauntless Shield or even an Iron defense boost, its Body Press starts doing a lot of damage, and it's kind of nice just being able to slide that Wide Guard in there. Now, when it comes to Solgaleo, we haven't really seen it used much in competitive formats in Generation 9, and we haven't really seen that much success, but I think it's only a matter of time before we start seeing some people experiment and play around with it. Maybe we might see that wide guard on the Solgaleo, and maybe we might see Solgaleo see some success in the future. Honestly, Regulation I just started at the beginning of May, so the format is still incredibly young, and it's only going to develop over time. So I just wanted to point that out. And plus, these three restricteds are the only ones that do get wide guards. So really, if you want to have it, you do have that tool to put onto these Pokemon when building your team. Now let's move on to some non-restricted legendary Pokemon and get into that, because like I said, you have 4 other Pokemon on your team. Therefore, if you might not want to necessarily run wide guard on your restricted Pokemon, you're going to have some other Pokemon to choose from and put those on. Or maybe you just want another Pokemon in general that can learn wide guard to go on a team alongside maybe Lunala and Zamazenta. Iron Valiant is a Pokemon that has been seeing an uprising in usage rates towards the tail end of Regulation G, and honestly, it's no surprise whatsoever. With access to great offensive stats in its attack and special attack, alongside a decent speed stat and a well-balanced move pool between offensive and supportive options, Iron Valiant is a highly customizable unit. With Quark Drive being able to give it a speed boost while either on electric terrain or via booster energy, Iron Valiant can speed past opponents to go for damage or for disruption. It's a great partner Pokemon next to Miraidon, since it can naturally benefit from electric terrain having its Quark Drive activated. And remember what I said about Miraidon adapting to run Choice Specs Terra Fairy? Well, I don't think I mentioned the specs, but anyways, I did mention that they adapted to running Terra Fairy Dazzling Gleam. Iron Valiant can say no and just throw up the wide guard to protect Miraidon from that super effective fairy type damage, which means you don't necessarily have to rely on your Terra to block out that super effective damage, and you can potentially pop that Terra later on Miraidon or another Pokemon. So that's going to be relatively handy for having Iron Valiant as a supportive unit next to Miraidon, but it doesn't just stop right there. Iron Valiant can be great next to a lot of other physical attackers as well. By having access to coaching, Iron Valiant can give them an attack and defense boost, which could be great into the likes of, say, Calyrex-Ice Rider, Koraidon, Groudon, and if you have Miraidon as your other restricted legendary on that team, it naturally sets the electric terrain, meaning Iron Valiant can actually run a Focus Sash item as opposed to the booster energy, so it can stick around a little bit longer than you might not expect it to, because Iron Valiant doesn't really have the greatest special defense. It also has access to moves such as Encore and Icy Wind as well, meaning Iron Valiant can lock opponents into repeating the same move they used. So if your opponent maybe went for Protect, you can lock them into a Protect and effectively stop them from doing anything for a couple of turns. Or maybe they went for a setup move, you lock them into that setup move with Encore, and now they effectively can't do anything there, and Iron Valiant's partner can go in and do some big damage. Or maybe you just decide you're going to lock your opponent into that spread move and then throw up wide guard afterwards. Like, the potential is definitely there for Iron Valiant, and on top of that, with Icy Wind, Iron Valiant can slow down things for its partners as well. So it's a great Pokemon right there, and Wide Guard is definitely a great option to have into its move kit. Now, similarly to Iron Valiant, Mienshao can play some comparable roles. Now, it doesn't get access to Encore like Iron Valiant does, but it does have a natural fake out immunity in the inner focus ability, while also having access to fake out itself. Now, the nice thing about Mienshao being fake out immune is fake out and wide guard actually share the same speed priority tier of +3, meaning it is hypothetically possible for a wide guard user to be outsped by a faster fake out mon and shut down, and therefore you lose that wide guard protection, meaning your opponent could come in and nail you with some massive damage. Like you might take a Choice Scarf Water Spout, Kyogre, Water Spout right there and just lose most of your HP, which not really the greatest thing. So being able to keep your wide guard user immune to fake out is also a nice little thing. So mainly there, you could either use Terra Ghost on Iron Valiant or just have Mienshao and its inner focus as an option to just keep it intact right there. So just some food for thought. Aside from Iron Valiant and Mienshao, there's some other notable fighting type Pokemon that get access to Wide Guard that you can consider for your team. We have Hitmontop, Conkeldurr, and Gallade. All of these Pokemon at one point in history have been used in competitive play, and they all fill their own little niches and support roles that can be fun to consider to incorporate into your team. Hitmontop, similar to Mienshao, gets access to Fake Out, and it also gets the Intimidate ability, making it extremely similar to Incineroar. You know, one of the most common Pokemon in all of competitive play. Now, Hitmontop, like Incineroar, has had some relatively good success by being able to cycle in Intimidate and Fake Out support, and having that Wide Guard right there has been pretty helpful in the past, seeing as it can not only just protect itself from the spread moves such as like Astral Barrage or Expanding Force from a Shadow Rider, but it can protect the team from Water Spout from Kyogre as well, and maybe you're playing an extraordinarily heavy rain team, and maybe you do have an Incineroar and a Hitmontop on your team. While Incineroar might not necessarily love the idea of going up to fight a Kyogre, most likely an Urshifu, and whatever other restricted legendary Pokemon is on that team, but Hitmontop might be down to throw down. Yeah, I didn't like how that sounded either, but we're keeping it in there. Anyways, Hitmontop might be down to go in there and provide that Wide Guard and Fake Out support for the team to deal with that, which could be relatively handy. And then when it comes to Gallade and Conkeldurr, they kind of have a little bit more of an offensive element to them on top of having that Wide Guard support. Gallade can set up Trick Room and get some speed control that way. And on top of that, it also has the Sharpness ability, which means its slicing moves gain a 50% boost in power. So it's already Stab Sacred Sword can hit all the harder. And if Gallade gets that Trick Room up, well, that basically enables things for your slower Pokemon to move first, which could be a nice support right there. And then in Conkeldurr's case, it has the means of raising its own firepower by getting a status condition with its Guts ability and giving its attack a 50% boost, which is extremely easy to do with a Life Orb. Conkeldurr also has priority Mach Punch and Bullet Punch. At least I think it has Bullet Punch. I know for sure it has Mach Punch. But either way, a Guts boosted priority move on top of Wide Guard support can be relatively nice, since Conkeldurr is relatively slow to begin with. But another thing too is if you wanted to, you could drop the Flame Orb and go for Sheer Force Life Orb support and then double up on the power boost by exchanging the secondary effects of Conkeldurr's damaging moves and get that power boost. And on top of that, it could just catch your opponents off guard and they might not necessarily think to status you because they might think you're already Guts to begin with in a closed team sheet format. So really, these three fighting type Pokemon could be spicy options to add to your team and to diversify some Wide Guard options right there. And plus, your opponents might not necessarily think Wide Guard right away. They'll probably think it for Gallade and Hitmontop, but they might not think about it for Conkeldurr. because Conkeldurr, it wants to do so much damage with its high base attack stat to begin with, so your opponents might not necessarily think wide guard right away. Now that goes out the window in an open team sheet format, but I mean if you're competing in something like say the Grand Challenge or or rather the doubles ranked ladder, you can potentially catch your opponents off guard there instead with Conkeldurr. So there's my main thoughts on those three fighting type options. Now, what about the non-fighting types? Well, as far as non-fighting types go, we do have some options as well. Moving away from the fighting type Pokemon, we now have Pelipper and Araquanid. Now, Pelipper's whole shtick in previous formats has been to come in, click Wide Guard and Tailwind, provide that protection for the team, while also providing some speed control. Now, in a format like Regulation I, Pelipper might face a bit of trouble since there are a lot faster Pokemon out there, so when the Tailwind goes up, Pelipper might still get outsped by some Pokemon, and it might be a little bit more vulnerable to getting doubled up on, whether it be taking a Fake Out and having its Focus Sash broken, or just two back-to-back hits from two different Pokemon. So it might face a little bit of trouble that way, but I think Pelipper can still potentially fill that niche so long as it's played around carefully. Now, as far as Araquanid goes, Araquanid's got insane damage output with its water type attacks thanks to its water bubble ability, and it does have some solid special bulk on that aspect, so it might be able to come in and take a special attack or two, and if it can come in and nullify some spread moves with that wide guard, it's going to be relatively handy. Araquanid is a very slow Pokemon, so if you get Trick Room up, Araquanid has the potential to do some damage itself with that water bubble boosted water type attack of choice, or it can just provide some more utility for slower Trick Room mons as well. Maybe you have Calyrex-Ice Rider on your team, or maybe Ursaluna Blood Moon, and your opponent's also playing a Trick Room mode. Araquanid can come in here, provide that wide guard, nullify some spread moves, and you can go for some moves of your own. Maybe you want to go off with that Glacial Lance with an Ice Rider, or a Blood Moon from that Ursaluna. The options are definitely there for both of these Pokemon when you think about it, but you might have to be a little bit more careful too, because Miraidon's going to be prominent as well as Raging Bolt, and both of these Pokemon are water types. Now, alternatively, what you could do potentially is maybe even consider running Terra Ground on them, and maybe you might be onto something there. Now, if you want to get spicy with Wide Guard, some of the starter Pokemon get it as well. Swampert, Torterra, and Chestnut, they all get it, and there might be some interesting combinations here. Torterra and Swampert are both ground-type Pokemon, so they might be able to provide a little bit of utility for getting around opposing Miraidon electric spread options, whether it be Discharge or Parabolic Charge, which honestly, it's been a long time since I've seen Parabolic Charge, but I mean, it's there. It's something you should probably think about just in the back corners of your mind. You might see it, you might not, but Swampert and Torterra just being naturally immune to electric type attacks could be handy. Torterra also resists Precipice Blades from Groudon, which could be relatively nice too. And similarly enough, so does Chestnut, being a grass type Pokemon, as well as being yet another fighting type Pokemon that gets Wide Guard. And honestly, between the combination of Wide Guard and Chestnut's bulletproof ability, I feel like there's a nice combination of moves that you should be able to shut down with that particular matchup right there, or rather that combination. Yeah, we'll call it a wombo combo there with the bulletproof and wide guard utility options. Swampert being a water ground type is relatively nice. Now, you don't really see a whole lot of stuff with Swampert. I feel like we might need to see another buff for Swampert in the future, or maybe in the bare minimum, at least see the return of Mega Swampert, which honestly, with Legends ZA coming around, we'll probably see that too. But anyways, I feel like Swampert could have the potential, but I just don't know if it's quite there. And then when it comes to Torterra, well, good luck with running it in general, because that thing is 4 times weak to ice. And while it did gain access to Shell Smash, it kind of wants to do that more than Wide Guard, being completely honest with you here. But Torterra could be a fun Pokemon to see nonetheless on the ladder. I wouldn't recommend bringing it to major competitions, but I mean, hey, you do you. And now let's wrap this up with our last little bit of spicy Pokemon, because you know what? Wide Guard is a rock type move at the end of the day, and I feel like it would be unfair to not talk about rock type Pokemon before ending the video. So let's bring it up here. We've got Stonejourner. We also have access to some other rocks, and yeah, let's go right here. We got Probopass. Yes, Probopass. I know, it sounds weird, but just wait for it. Hear me out. And then finally, we've got probably my favorite one of all, Bastiodon. We've got Bastiodon. So, these 3 rock-type Pokemon could potentially be spicy options for Wide Guard as well. Stonejourner, let's start off with that. Its ability, Power Spot, powers up its partner Pokemon on the field and the power of their moves. If I remember right, I'm fairly certain it's a 20% boost from Power Spot that Stonejourner can power up. And with its combination of base 100 HP, 125 attack, and 135 defense, Stonejourner should be alright on the physical side of battle. Its Rock Slide should do some decent damage. It can provide a little bit of utility with that Wide Guard, while also having that passive support from the Power Spot ability. So there is that to consider. Now, one thing that's not really working in Stonejourner's favor is the fact that it's only base 70 speed and base 20 special defense. Honestly, if Stonejourner were a little bit faster, I would have probably started off the video with Stonejourner here. But, I mean, you could still do it. I think Stonejourner could be fun to use at the end of the day. And now Probopass and Bastiodon. Both of these Pokemon share the exact same typing, Rock Steel. It's a terrible typing. It's got a lot of weaknesses. But both of these Pokemon have extraordinarily good physical and special defense, with Bastiodon being a little bit higher in the physical defense than Probopass, but Probopass's special defense is a little bit higher than Bastiodon's. You use Terastallization, you get rid of that terrible typing, and now we're getting somewhere with the bulk. These can both be budget Zamazentas at the end of the day, and I'm a little bit biased in favor of Bastiodon because I've brought Bastiodon to my channel before and hit the ladder with it. But both of these Pokemon can do some massive damage with Body Press, especially with a defense boost from Iron Defense. Wide Guard provides some great utility. Probopass could potentially go for a special attacking route as well, so you might be able to do some stuff there. I'm fairly certain it also gets access to Metal Sound, so you can also start debuffing things' special defense there, and then maybe go for Flash Cannon. So, like, you could do something like that. Bastiodon gets access to Foul Play, which is just phenomenal. Basically, Bastiodon doesn't have to care that its own attack stat is so low. It could just use its opponent's attack stat to do some massive damage. And honestly, Foul Play into a Calyrex-Ice Rider or even a Shadow Rider that's not terrestrialized does massive damage. So really, there's that. Like, I like all 3 of these rock-type Pokemon here, and like I said, I'm a bit biased in favor of Bastiodon, but I think it could definitely work out great for having some fun if you wanted to just mess around with the ladder too. Like, maybe you could see Bastiodon pop off at a regional. I don't know, but I want to see it happen. I want to see Bastiodon go somewhere and do some massive damage to things. Because I honestly, between Body Press and Foul Play, I think that's just a hilarious combination. And then on top of that too, it gets Roar. Roar is nice because it can force your opponents to be switched out. So if they're setting up in front of Bastiodon thinking they're safe, Roar can switch them out. And Roar's priority is not quite as low as Trick Rooms. So if you think your opponent's going for Trick Room, you can actually go for Roar before they set up the Trick Room and force them off the field. So that's just hilarious as well. I've done a discussion video on Bastiodon. I've brought it to the ladder for a battle video, so definitely check those out too if you want. But anyways, before this gets too long, we're going to wrap it up here. We're going to end it because I still have to sit down and edit this. In a nutshell, spread moves are bad. They cause massive damage if you're not prepared. Wide guard will definitely make your life a lot better, and you don't have to worry about timing out specific protects. You don't have to worry about potentially having to go for a double protect. You don't have to worry necessarily about your typing, whether it's a disadvantage or advantage for taking a spread move and then hoping you can take the follow-up attack from a partner Pokemon. Wide guard just eliminates that from the equation, and you don't have to worry about it at the end of the day. Thank you guys so much for if you made it to this point into the video. I really appreciate it. Be sure to let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and I will see you next time.